Well, hello and welcome to episode 60 of Retropower Uncut. And here I am standing by the yellow RS2000. You may recall from previous episodes, this was here for a few little jobs. It had been sort of put to one side for a little bit. That's because we've been having a gearbox built for it. You long-term viewers and watchers of cars that we've built may recall the car was originally built pretty much faithfully to the Group 1 RS2000 spec, because that's what the car had been built as when it was new, basically from new. So we tried to be pretty faithful to that. One of the areas that was actually slightly tricky on that, but not impossible, was the gearbox, because this car was, again, basically from when it was new, had been fitted with an original Ford rocket gear set in the heavy-duty 4-speed box. But that gearbox had been lost or sold or something, I don't exactly know, but the gearbox had gone by the wayside along through the history of the car, so it didn't have that gearbox with it when we got it. So Brian Hill, BGH Geartech, had built, we spoke to them, and he said there's a couple of options. One is a good used rocket set if he could lay his hands on one, and the other option was he does a set which is very close ratio-wise to the rocket set, which is I believe made by laser welding gears onto a turned down main shaft. I believe I'll be corrected on this. Sorry, not a turned down main shaft, a turned down lay shaft. The issue is obviously the lay shaft being one piece. I believe he hard turns off a couple of the gears and then has different gears laser welded on. I'd have to verify that's the case. But I can't actually remember whether we ended up with that setup, or I think what we actually ended up with was he did manage to lay his hands on a really good used genuine rocket set. So I think it got built with that. Anyway, that's all kind of by the by, because in a slight departure from faith to its original format, the owner of the car, who is the son of the original owner, both of whom still look after and drive the car, it wants some slightly taller gearing. It's a bit tricky on the road. It's a little bit, because it's got a 4.1 to 1 ratio diff and a 4-speed, so it's screaming in 4th gear at pretty low road speeds relatively. So he wants to make it a bit more road drivable, because he's not competing with it. And the options were change the axle ratio, but that will lose some of the sparkle of the car. So the consensus was to convert to a 5-speed gearbox rather than changing the diff ratio. After a bit of toing and froing, a lot of head scratching, that was the conclusion. Obviously, we want to do it without really doing anything too decisive or incisive to the shell. So the gearbox has now arrived, and we've just been massaging, I think would be the best word, just very slightly swelling the transmission tunnel, so that we can get the 5-speed gearbox in without actually cutting anything, because we don't really want to do any permanent changes to the car, such as the history of the car. We don't really want to do anything that's irreversible. So we've gone for the least traumatic way of doing it is to basically just slightly swell the sides of the tunnel right above the original gearbox mount, so the Type 9 5-speed will fit, and then had a new built Type 9 5-speed built for it, which will be fitted. I think that'll be next week. We've had to drop that just for a couple of days to move on with, walking backwards now, the Chevette, which is the bustling hive of activity at the moment. It's a busy times on this. Basically, the major push and the big leap is rolling road dyno session. Engine's been dynoed. Now the car has got to be dynoed again with the engine in on the rolling road dyno. That's what the current drive is towards. So there's been various jobs going on. Scott has finished off some aluminium fabrication for the cooling system, the lower coolant pipe, the lower main coolant hose. He's fabricated that. You may recall from previously that we've got George drew up on CAD some very nice sort of skeletal aluminium billet sections to support the Motec keypad, control keypad that we're using for the PDM. And you will have seen previously that was all machined and looking lovely. Well, that's now back from anodizing. We've had that anodised now. We've had that looks absolutely stunning. That's all now been fitted in the car, and the keypad's now fitted to that instead of the temporary plastic 3D printed mount. Scott's also got the footrest in on the passenger side, because that's going to be tricky to get in later on once we've got seats and things in. It's much easier to get in at the moment. He's also done the throttle cables, got those fitted, and then there's things like we need bonnet catches, so he's fitted the aero catches to the bonnet so that we can actually latch the bonnet down, like that. And then the Bilsteins, the cars that we're using, turreted Escort Bilstein adjustable platform, Group 4 dampers on the back, row jointed at the bottom with the threaded bodies, same as on a Group 4 Escort type damper. So we've got those on the back. They're now loosely fitted at the minute, will be fully fitted later once we've done a few more bits of toing and froing. James has just been making up side spaces in stainless steel for setting the panhard rod height on the axle casing. And I think prop shaft, yes. Sorry, that was a bit of a last minute thing, because he's a very busy man. But we picked that up from John Mack at Dave Mack Props yesterday, I believe. We picked the prop shaft up for it, which is now half fitted at least. It'll be fully fitted later, but it's at least partially fitted at the moment. We're just waiting on some bolts. But yeah, the prop shaft's picked up from Dave Mack Props. Always excellent service from them. So that's on. And yeah, the next phase then was Dave Rowe visiting to basically commission the full Motec electronics suite, basically doing all the PDM programming and dash programming, so that the Motec dash and Motec PDM will then control everything, and everything works. So now we have working lights, we have working cooling fans, we have working the myriad. Carl's better to explain this than me, because I'm not actually completely familiar with everything that's how everything's programmed and controlled, but things from your heated screen control through to the power feeds to the electric power steering assistance that the car's got. There's lots and lots and lots of things that are all controlled all via the PDM, because you have to remember on this car there's no fuses or relays. All the electrics and electronics are all controlled and fed via the Motec PDM unit that's on there. I'm not going to try and read out or tell you which model it is, because I can't remember. Carl has said it previously. I can't remember which model it is now. So my apologies to Dave Rowe and Motec for not mentioning that, but I can't actually remember what it is. But yeah, everything is all controlled on the car electrically via the Motec keypad on the centre console, which is sitting on those billet mounts, and the programming on that is now all done. So the next stop really, and obviously then Dave's also then fired the car up with a loose, a rough map on the Motec ECU. He's then fired the engine in the workshop and just checked that everything's good, no leaks. All the installation is done okay, and everything's working there. So yeah, Dave's fired that up. That's all good. Sounds nice and crisp and ready to go. So the next stage on that is getting it to the rolling road, which is early next week. So it's all hands to the pumps at the moment, finishing off a number of areas that need doing prior to rolling road trip. So yeah, watch this space. You'll hopefully be able to see a bit of footage of it under load on the rollers very soon. swing briefly past the back of Kaiser 2, which finally we've had a long wait for some replacement dampers. Just that Bilstein are extremely busy, and there's been a bit of reorganisation within Bilstein in terms of where they're building custom units. Previously, custom units were partially built in Leicester in the UK, partially built in Germany. I believe this is all correct. I'll probably be corrected by Bilstein now, but as far as I'm aware, the units were some parts were built in Germany, some parts were built in the UK. Some of the final assembly was done. This is on one-off special purchase units. A lot of the final assembly was done at Leicester, but a lot of the earlier work was done in Germany, and that's changed now. And now I believe most, if not all, the work is now being carried out in Leicester. So I think that change led to a bit of a backlog as Bilstein got caught up with the work. So we've had quite a long wait for a couple of sets of dampers, but they're getting on top of things again now, I believe. And we've had the dampers arrive, the replacement dampers for the back of this car. There's been a long saga with rear dampers on this car that we were determined to bottom. There's been various issues, just things we weren't happy with, which weren't really anybody's individual fault. It's just one of those combinations of circumstance. But we think now we've got the problem cracked. So we'll find out next week, but we've had to just park that job just for the minute to get back onto the Chevette to just get a few things finished off, because the looming rolling road is pretty urgent now. So that means we've just had to park that for, it'll probably be only a day that we're not on that while we're trying to get that ready for the rollers. So that's about where we're at in assembly hall. And the people asking questions on what's happening with various other cars, there are small bits of work going on particularly, for example, the Stratos. I know a few people have been asking about the Stratos. There's interior work going on in the background on the Stratos. It's been done by Dean at Trimworks. That's going on in the background. So there are things changing a little bit on that. But we will go back onto that once that interior work's done. But also once we've got a couple of cars which are very close to completion, finished and out of the workshop. We obviously there come points in projects where one has to push for completion on a vehicle that is very close to completion. So we're trying to push a couple to completion. Then we can pick up the ones that are slightly the next branch down the completion tree. So that's what's happening with the Mustang and the Stratos. So both two examples of that, where they'll be next in line for the pushing to completion stages. Hopefully, all being well from a customer point of view. Hopefully, all being well. So right, we'll move on next door and go to the noisy, dirty zone through all the through all the shadowy figures of cars here. And I'll wave a mug again, in that plenty more Retropower mugs. If anybody wants a mug, we've still got a fair few, I believe. We've still got a number of those. If anybody would like one. So we come into the chaos zone. Now hopefully there's a finishing line in sight for the chaos now. In that, I'll touch on it very briefly. The paint booth installation, the saga of the paint booth installation, 6 weeks on, is actually coming close to the finishing line. I can see the finishing line on that one now. So once that's done, I can get that booth gone, which is a job I'll be starting very soon. Once that's gone, we'll have space in here and still be less stressed, and everybody will be happy. Still have room to work without having to climb on top of his welder and generally trip over everything and try and work in a postage stamp in the corner. We'll all be much happier when we actually have a workshop to work in rather than carnage. But it's getting close. It's close now. As is the Land Cruiser rust repair unforeseen metalwork stages. Tom is currently finishing off. Tom's been off for a couple of days, but he's now back today. He's finishing off, basically just getting the panels to all fit to our satisfaction. There's a combination of some of the rust repairs have moved gaps here and there, and a lot of the panels didn't fit particularly well to start with. So the door gaps were not particularly even on these. They weren't a vehicle built to have perfect gaps, and this certainly illustrates that point. Equally, there's a couple of areas where the repairs have meant that the gaps have moved slightly, so he's been tweaking those as well. But he's just been improving the gaps. There's a bit of work on these rear doors. Things have moved a little bit around the rear door aperture. I think they always will, just because of the nature of the build, the way the hardtop goes together. It's a little bit variable in how it all assembles. add in the complication of doing the lower door repairs on the doors. Everything's moved a bit, and there were a few gaps that we weren't 100% happy with. So Tom's been working on those, and we're very, very close to having those finished now. I think as of probably Monday, maybe Tuesday, we'll be back on to doing the slightly more fun part of the metalwork modifications for the custom work that we're doing on the car. So we did a little bit of that early on, but we'll be moving back onto the custom work because there's a big list again. But viewers with long memories that remember when the first episode, when we first brought this Land Cruiser into the workshop, we went through a list of things that the customer would like to be done to the car, and things that areas we were going to be addressing and areas we were going to be changing on it, aside of the obvious things like the engine. And we're going to then be going through that list and putting the metalwork foundations in for all of the cosmetic type changes, and looking at obvious things like, we need a gear shifter in there, we've got to build the housings for the gear shifter and the mounts for the gear shifter, things like that. There's lots and lots and lots of sort of semi-cosmetic or indeed engineering necessary jobs that we've got to do, that have taken second seat to all the rot repair for a while, but we'll be back onto those next week, so that'll be really good, because that's what this project was all about before we hit the poor rot repair and full of filler saga, which should come as no surprise, I know, but it genuinely did with this one. So there we go. That's where we're at with that. And also, while we're on this car, pointing at the engine end, I won't bother walking around there because there's not an awful lot to see, but George has been busy he's been doing a lot of other things in the background as well. He's not just been doing this, he's been doing things for a project we can't talk about, plus a number of other things. George has been extremely busy on CAD. But the work he's been doing on this has been the cam covers, because we don't want it to look like a modern engine, and obviously the Lexus V8 that's fitted does look like a modern engine, or too modern for this vehicle. So we are making new replacement cam covers, which will date the engine backwards a bit and make it look a bit more in keeping with this vehicle. And we will be making a new inlet manifold, to which we'll be fitting a 4-barrel type downdraft throttle body, similar like the American style Holly replacement type 4-injector throttle bodies. We're going to fit one of those with a pancake type air cleaner over it. We're hoping we can adapt one or make one, whatever. But basically, we're going to have a nice old style sort of 1970s, 60s, 70s style air cleaner, and some remodeled cam covers on the engine, just so that it all looks more in keeping with the vehicle and doesn't look like a modern fuel injected engine. So that's the aim. It all needs to look right, not just work right. So George is working on, he's done, I think he's at the stage where he's got all his hole centres picked up. He's 3D printed 2 sections, which he's bolted together and then used to verify that he's got his hole centres right and that he's got his clearances over the camshaft and everything else correct in the top, which I believe he has. And I think now he's at the next stage of actually starting to model the surfaces for the cam covers. So yeah, we'll be interested to see where that goes, and a bit more nice billety goodness. It'll be billety goodness that we then have to make not look like billety goodness. It'll be billet things that are then made toned down to not look like billets. It'll be quite exciting to see that. I like that sort of thing. Very, very fancy machined parts that are then hidden. So moving on from Land Cruiser, we'll go down here and squeeze our way through to Stu at the Morris. And here is Stu beavering away on a door. I'm going to duck round this side because Stu's straight on camera then. It's Stu's favourite thing. Stu's working away and has been slogging away on lots and lots of awkward bits. Basically, it's the awkward stage, which it has been for the last, I don't know what now, 4 weeks or so, maybe a bit more. Just lots and lots of fiddly jobs. At the moment, George has done a lovely job of engineering a door pull and catch operation mechanism to go where the door handle goes in the door. But now Stu's got the other end of that job, which is then making that liaise with all the other bits of the door, and then also making a sealing system, making the door accept a sealing system that will work. And doing quite a lot of other work. He's obviously, previously you've seen, he's done the electric window fitment. But he's been modifying the top of the doors because we've changed the quarter glass shape, and we've made it one-piece glass, so there's no quarter glass, there's just a billet infill panel in the corner. He's had to weld sections into the top of the doors, and at the same time also make them accept a slightly more modern seal, so that the top of the doors are just a bit nicer. And also make electric window mechanisms that you can actually get in and out of the door as a live demonstration of why these things are slightly fiddly. It's quite tricky to get everything into a door this small. This is one of the problems with this car, and this illustrates it beautifully, is that when fitting electric windows, a bigger piece of glass, a modern door catch mechanism, central locking, etc., etc., to these doors, space gets very, very tight. So yeah, it is a little bit challenging, but he's getting there now. The catches now work. The release handle operates. He's mocked up release handle that operates. That releases the door catch. The central lock, the space for the central locking motor, that now fits. There's room for the pull rods for everything. Catches work, and I believe he's done the fabrication on the top of the other door. Which is just here, just behind me. So he's done the fabrication on the top of the other door, which will now accept the seals, accept the glass, accept everything that's got a slot through the top of the door, because it's all a bit bigger now. So that'll all fit, and now he's got to do the same fabrication on that door as he's already done on that door. And then both doors will accept a more modern and off-the-shelf available flocked rubber waist belt seal that will go along the top of there for the door glass. So yeah, it's good progress on that. It's a challenging job, and I think Stu's now at the stage where he'll be glad to see the finish of it. I think now it becomes a bit of a slog at this stage, and working on your own in a rather small corner with crap related to civil engineering piled all around you doesn't make the day any easier. So it's I think he's looking forward to the final hurdles on this, but it's getting very, very close now. It's not too far away. He's been working on the screen wash tank. Again, the viewers who with memories will remember that we have got header tanks fitted to the bulkhead, and then for the screen wash tank, that will be feeding a screen wash tank in the footwell. Something I've done before, and it works it's quite a neat setup. Keeps the weight down low and keeps it out of the engine bay where we're really short on space. So Stu started the work on that. He's machined up some aluminium bobbins for the tank to mount on, got them welded into the back half of the tank. He's patterned and folded up the two halves of the tank. The only thing we're waiting for on that now is a small section of 6mm aluminium tubing, which will be the dip tube for the pickup for the washer pump, because the washer pump's an external to tank pump, and because it's the bottom of the tank is quite deep and slim, it needs a dip tube to pick up from that, so that's going to be welded inside the tank. So we can't weld the two halves of the tank together until the dip tube's all stitched down inside the tank and out through where the bar, and that'll have a little barb on machined onto the end of that tube for the little flexible pipe that feeds the washer pump. But yeah, we're just waiting on delivery of that piece of aluminium tube, which may be here today, maybe here Monday, but as soon as we've got that, then that can be shaped up, cut through the tank, welded in, and then the two halves of the tank then can be welded together, and that's all pretty much done then, and that'll be carpeted and basically act as the end of the footwell for the passenger. That'll be quite a nice sort of bulkhead end to the footwell, and footrest if you wanted it to be as well. So it's that'll be quite a neat setup. So yeah, that's the other thing that Stu's been working on this week. As usual, I've been working on things nothing to do with cars, largely paint booth and making holes in roofs and things like that. So yeah, I've been away from it, but I can see the finishing line where I'll be able to get back on to working on cars, which will be quite nice actually. I'm quite looking forward to it. So anyway, I think that pretty much rounds things off for this week. So hope you enjoyed my ramblings, and I think Cal will be with you, or Cal or both of us will be with you again next week to give you another rundown of what's been going on. So until then, goodbye, and good to see you. Fun.